Hello, everybody. Here's another discussion on Beyond Borders. We were going to look at a document tonight, basically about what's going on with cell phones, particularly in Latin America, and kind of get an idea for what is happening down there. So we do have a chat window open here in the upper right. You can talk in that, and you can send a message if you'd like. Hopefully it will show up depending on if you're on Facebook or LinkedIn. You should be able to send the chat. So with that said, Beyond Borders, we're basically trying to work with different people around the world and basically find different kinds of solutions to various technology problems and basically just talk about what's going on in the tech sphere around the world. Basically I wanted to check what's going on with the Harvard Atlas of Economic Complexity. See if we can get to that here. So open this up. This is the main tool I've been using. You can actually do world on this, so it can give you different zones, or you can do world for world, and then you can choose the product that you're interested in. But if we're interested in mainly electronics, we can keep this one, and then of the electronics section, we can select cell phone. So we can ask ChatGPT what the HS might have a different code for this. We might use this code here, I believe, since this one is a little bit newer code. It might have mobile phones, might be more part of that code. See if we can keep this, hide this only, and then keep only telephones. Okay, so they are, this code is 8517H12. So 8517 is the one that we want to keep. See if we can isolate just this one product. Looks like we can't necessarily do that yet. So maybe there's a way to do that with, let me see here, no. But basically mobile phones is the second biggest, it's basically the biggest, right? So integrated circuits is like subcategory, really smaller components, but telephones is basically the number one for the world. So we should see most of the money being spent on electronics is basically for cell phones, and that shouldn't be a major surprise. But so basically what I came up with is this document to kind of show how to sell cell phones down in Latin America, and it's basically looking at Mexico and Brazil as the primary two places. Those are kind of the bigger markets too when you look at locations. And then you do, here's what we do. So for electronics, and then you basically see in the Americas, you can see Mexico being the largest and Brazil being the second, and Canada being fairly large as well. But basically Mexico being huge amount of exports, but that's imports. And you can see Brazil here on the import side. So basically on the import side, even more than the exports, so that's kind of a bad sign, but basically you can see that there's basically a lot of imports being done there. So I was really surprised to see the other day we looked at the different factories going on in Mexico, and there's kind of a number of like Foxconn, Samsung, and some others that are doing some pretty big factories down in Mexico. But basically this document kind of goes through and shows, so basically this is kind of a sales plan for selling cell phones via the internet. So there's eBay, and then there's also another one called Mercado Libre. So we actually are trying to get it set up for Mercado Libre. It's a little bit more like Amazon, and they do for filling the orders online and stuff like that. So and a lot of this is actually coming out of Shenzhen, China. So we're actually buying the products from Asia and then shipping them directly from Asia down to Mexico or to Brazil. So that's kind of the next big hurdle in this document, is figuring out exactly how to do that. and find reliable places to ship the products to. We were looking at primarily Puerto Vallarta. I'll show you a map here what this looks like. Load up in a second. But basically this is Puerto Vallarta. And you can see some of the prices for hotels, as well as some other things along the coast here. And basically what's going on in Mexico is a lot of people, Mexico City is still the largest down here, and we could do like a population map. Let's do a population map really quick to get this. Let's see if I can find a good population map. Here we go. But when you look at the population down in Central America, Mexico City is still big, pretty much the biggest, and then the second biggest is Guadalajara, and this is heading out towards the ocean front. There's also some other cities like Acapulco and Cancun out in here that are pretty big. But basically Mexico City is where it's at in terms of the population. You can see even the suburbs of Mexico City being quite populated. But when you look at the map here, it's actually quite dry and mountainous. So once you get up into the hills, it gets a little bit cooler. And that's one of the reasons why people move up into the hills here, is because the temperature gets to be so hot. You can see down in Miami, it's basically the same temperature as Miami. I have another map here that I use for temperature, and I'll load that up in the background, Google Earth, so you can kind of see what the temperature looks like down there. We'll do and this is called a Köppen overlay. So it kind of gives you similar climate zones, and you kind of have to do two of these to kind of see, like to have it a little bit opacity. I'll do one more for this one right here. This one has red zones on it, I think. You can see, rather than blue being hot, you can see the red. I'll tone that down a little bit so you can see. And then let's get the earthquakes off. I usually like studying all the earthquakes, but for this case, we can kind of see what's going on. So some of the hottest weather, it's actually pretty cool. It's similar to the California climate, but you can see this green zone, and then it gets into this red hot zone. So it's one of the reasons why people prefer up into Mexico City, because it's a little bit cooler. And actually we can get the annual temperature, which monthly for Mexico City. Let's just get that really quick. So put that on a map over here. So you can see kind of all months, it's basically pretty consistently 75 degrees in Mexico City. So it's quite nice year round, and then they got good amount of rain. But you can see that's one of the reasons why people prefer Mexico City. And then we can look at Puerto Vallarta as a separate one. Let's look at this. Grab this here for Puerto Vallarta and do Puerto Vallarta. And you can see it's going to be a little bit warmer. So about 10 degrees warmer, and then it gets up in the 90s. So it's a little bit hotter there. And I would say, well, even significantly hotter than Mexico City. So that's one of the reasons people prefer Mexico City. But then you don't have the oceanfront beach and things like that. So it's just a choice between Mexico City and Guadalajara area. But basically that's kind of the main discussion in terms of that. So, but basically what I was choosing is a couple locations to try to sell the cell phones down in Puerto Vallarta. And you can see right here, this is the area here. So basically the population will kind of continue along this horizontal and then kind of dead end here in Puerto Vallarta. And a lot of people do prefer Guadalajara because it is a little bit cooler and up in the mountains. But let's just zoom in here to take a look at the population so you can see where that is. And I'll zoom around here to see. And then we'll go look at the other place So basically, kind of there's like a farming area over in this side, kind of the western, northern side of Puerto Vallarta. This is kind of north-south. And then you can see the airport is like right here. It's international airport, obviously. And the other thing that's pretty great about Puerto Vallarta is the flights are pretty good. So if you do Puerto Vallarta and you explore the flights, you can get under $200 sometimes. And this is for round trip. Let's just do one way. So you can see all the way up into Vancouver, $137, $90 from Toronto, $200 from Chicago, $234 from Miami, and so on. So basically what we were trying to do is do a project here in Puerto Vallarta, and then from Puerto Vallarta get down to Rio de Janeiro, which is $500. So that's quite a long trip to do directly from North America all the way down to Rio. So you kind of have to break it up anyway, so might as well fly through Puerto Vallarta. And then the price of the ticket is pretty much the same as a one-way ticket all the way directly to Rio de Janeiro. So, but let's look at that a little bit more details in terms of our document. So basically what we've been doing is gone through and kind of studied each of these areas. Here is the Marina District, so let's go in here and look at that. See if I can grab that. But yeah, let's see, it looks like there's no comments yet, but interesting. Not quite working on that link here, so it's funny. See if we can grab this link here and see. Here we go. Let's see, we want to keep that link here. So this should show us the Marina District in Puerto Vallarta. So basically what happens here is right next to the airport. Is kind of a wealthier area. We wanted to look at what the cell phone situation was, particularly in this Marina District. There's not a whole lot of retail in general. It's a lot of housing. It's actually quite interesting because most of the less value of the housing is actually down in here, but they have more retail, so there's just no places to go out to eat, and also to buy electronics in this area. The mall is actually located down over here, and you can kind of see these bigger buildings are basically malls outside of Puerto Vallarta area. So you can see the beach being 500 feet from these kind of more restaurant areas and these backstreet areas. But the question also has to do with crime and other questions like that, in terms of choosing where potentially it might make sense. But yeah, so that's pretty much the main parts of the document. We are looking into the different companies basically in Shenzhen at this point, and going through and trying to contact them, work with them directly on shipping products down to Puerto Vallarta. There's this guy named Paul that lives in Shenzhen, trying to work with him on getting the products down there. And then here you can see some of the flights costs, like we pointed out before, certainly under $200. In many cases, round trip you can do for $400 or $500. Pretty good. So price ranges. Now it's $800 round trip, typically to Rio, so it's quite a little price bump on that. Now let's just look at the mall here. I'll show you the mall. It's kind of interesting to see what that looks like in Puerto Vallarta. So this whole area here, that marina that we were looking at is over here, but the problem is, so there's not any mall located over here, so a lot of the shopping is done here, and you have to hop into a car or even that, and there's only a few cell phone stores outside of this mall. So the mall basically has almost all the electronics for Puerto Vallarta. And in terms of, there's not too many other malls. This is the main mall in the area, and you can see this is the beachfront area. And it is quite smaller than Rio de Janeiro. There's quite a number more malls in Rio, but it does simplify the problem in terms of trying to work with finding the cell phone companies that we can work with. We might even try to talk with them about moving their location outside of the mall to one of the other locations that we're proposing, like over here, and work with them on reopening the store in this area. And we're actually looking at right in here. There's kind of this shopping district right here. I don't know if you can see, still kind of loading up. It's trying to so there's like a little shopping district right here. It's almost like a mini mall, and so you can kind of access that from some of these places in here. On this side, there might be an option down in here, but there isn't really any retail space. So this is all hotels and apartment complexes, so they kind of almost forgot to build. There's one little restaurant right here, but there's not a whole lot. I think this little building here may have had some retail. Let's zoom in. Yeah, so there is some retail here, so we can maybe talk with some of these guys and see. But this is like pretty small when you consider the whole area. This little block basically had, and it might be possible to talk with one of these handicraft stores, maybe work with them. And actually, let's add them to the list of locations. Mall area is one location at, and then let's say set a little image so we have that for the future to look at. This location we can partner with. So that's kind of a partner with. And then we have the shipping addresses. This is going to be part of the problem, is the shipping fees. It's basically, I don't know if you can read this here. It's basically about $30, $25 for shipping fees. And then that would get you down to Mexico from Shenzhen, China. So the total phone cost would be about $88. And this is a pretty good phone. It's like a $200 or $300 phone. But basically sourced out of Shenzhen. So we just wanted to check the prices carefully and see also the import tax. You'll notice it doesn't list any import tax on this. On the American shipment ones, it does list that, and I can show you that if you wanted to see the American shipments. I think this is, yeah, so this is the American side. Kind of hard to read this, but you can see import charges are basically $6. So we're not anticipating a whole lot. So it's actually cheaper to ship this to Puerto Vallarta than it is to the United States. And they have processing fees and different things. So it may be that they just don't ship that often. So it's basically adds $20 cost or so between shipping to Mexico versus the United States. And a lot of these phones aren't really well accepted in the United States yet, just for various reasons. But we have ordered a couple of them to try to test them out, and they work great. They're usually 10 processor systems, and then they have 1 terabyte of memory. So a lot of the phones that we buy here in the United States only have 128 gigs or 256 gigs of RAM. These are all 1 terabyte systems. And then this is some of the companies that we're actually specifically working with in this mall area. So there's Hospital de la Tecnología, and we're basically trying to call them, work with them to get the products in the store. If you're interested in trying to work with us, you might have to speak Spanish. They do. Some of these stores do speak English, and we've been working with them a little bit on the English side of things. But I definitely need some help on the Spanish side. If you're interested. And this is Laptop Master. They were really nice to us when I called them. And there's also free calling now on a lot of the cell phone plans. For example, my cell phone plan does allow free calling. And I think on Google, let me get the Google Voice. Okay, it's Google. Let's see what this says here. So this is the kind of the calling rates, and you can see Mexico landline is 1 cent a minute, so that's very affordable to make a phone call down to Mexico on Google Line at least. But I also have another service where it's actually 100% free, but you can see quite a number of different places around the world now we can call pretty low cost. But some of the larger countries, basically like India and Mexico, you can just see, I'll show you India really quick. India is 2 cents a minute, and then we just do China. 4 cents a minute for China. So, and they do mobile phones. The same thing for Brazil, like they do different prices for mobile phones. So we can call Brazil for the same price as Mexico. And interestingly, a lot of that is actually run by Tata Semiconductor, the fiber optics lines for calling internationally. But this is basically the whole entire plan. It's 185 pages, and we're basically trying to open source the project and work with different people on this. The whole goal is to try to work with the wildlife and animals down there. So we have some images of our store. I think I'll show a couple images of the store, what it looks like. We are considering getting like a boat and having a boat be like kind of as a model for the store. Maybe even have a mobile, like a truck to sell phones out of that, and some other ideas. So we're kind of looking at a number of different things. I'll keep going down to the bottom of this document. The rest of this is basically about Brazil. So if you're interested in seeing, basically there's 5 different locations in Brazil that we're looking at. It'd basically be from Rio de Janeiro down to Fortaleza, which is down in the south, almost into Argentina. So it's kind of quite a road trip, but basically these are the main kind of areas that we're looking at. And you can see the language has changed here. Some of this is in Portuguese and some of this is in Spanish. Kind of the document, the name of the business is called Yoe Phones, and that's basically, we're looking at potentially converting some spaces. There's a lot of like really cheap real estate down there in Brazil, and we're looking at kind of partnering up with other companies in the area. So we have different areas that we're like partnering with in this whole region, and this is kind of what this is the central, like we're looking at partnering with this gas station. Next to the gas station is kind of a mini mart. We want to work with places that have high security because it's a little bit difficult, even more so difficult in Brazil than in Mexico. But this is basically the store that we would look at. You can look at that on a map if you want. But I think I have some pictures down below here what the store might look like. Oh yeah, we have the pictures on our main website. So so this is getting into quite a lot of other details, kind of the store planning, how we would open up the store, and some other things. But we want to kind of keep it as a volunteer project because it's basically international. There's a lot of rules and regulations, and so we have to keep it primarily volunteer. But we have, this is the Silicon Jungle, kind of the store concept. You see what we're trying to do with the website here. We're still kind of very primitive on the website, but basically we want it to be kind of jungle feel for the store. We might even have a fish tank in the store, do some things like that. But basically it has quite a lot of greenery basically around the store and some cool things like that. We might have some wood rather than all white stores that you're used to walking into that are like Apple stores. Might be more wood oriented, so I want to kind of keep it environmentally friendly. But this is the main website here. This has all our details for our project olayoy@wordpress.com. And it basically includes the business plan. And then also we're looking down in Miami. We have some areas here. We're trying to work on basically a potential store down in Miami that would help us kind of learn how to do this in America. And there's kind of like a little Havana area, and then how that connects into the main area of Miami. There's kind of a west side of Miami that's kind of been developing into like a pretty cool region that we are looking at. But Little Havana is probably the right choice for us right now. And then there's also kind of the Little China area. But this is kind of looking at South Beach area. It's a little bit too expensive to get retail store right in South Beach, so it might not be possible. But we're looking at some different options. So hopefully this sounds interesting to you. But if you're interested in getting involved in the project, let me know. Send me a text message, and we'll try to talk about how we can work together. But this is the main document that we've been working on. Thank you so much. Hope you're interested in trying to work with us.